Hello everybody, welcome or welcome back to my channel. My name is Lottie and today I am talking you through my best books of 2022. So I read a grand total of 91 books during 2022 and this is a list of the ones that are the top tier, they are the best of the best. They are the books that have stuck with me throughout the year and the ones that I keep thinking about again and again, even though I finished them maybe in January. 2022 was a strange reading year for me because I feel like I read my favourite book in January and then for the rest of the year nothing really lived up to it, whereas in 2021 I read a lot of new favourites during that year. I read Nevernight, I read The Aurora Cycle, I read Loveless. I read so many books in 2021 that I feel like were massive favourites, and for 2022 there was not a lot of books that I feel like I can call a new favourite, which was such a strange feeling to me. It was strange, it was just really strange that I read my favourite book of the year in January and then nothing really lived up to it for the rest of the year, and it was quite sad really because I just was constantly chasing this feeling and being let down basically. But I've managed to get together a list of 8 books that are my favourites of 2022. These are the books that have kind of kept going through my brain even after I have shut the final page. Let's just get on with the list and you can see which books are my tops of 2022. So book number 1 is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jeanette McCurdy, which was the only non-fiction that I read in 2022, but it was a very good non-fiction. Jeanette McCurdy was a child star on Nickelodeon when I was growing up. She is most famous for playing Sam in iCarly, and this is her memoir about her rise to fame, how she got into acting and sort of a little bit thereafter. It is a very touching, very difficult to read memoir about emotional abuse essentially. She suffered a lot of emotional abuse from her mom, from the rest of her family. It resulted in eating disorders and other mental health issues. She really did not want to be an actress when she was growing up, and her mom really pushed her into pursuing that career path, and as a result it messed her up essentially. So I listened to the audiobook for this and I really enjoyed it because it was read by Jeanette herself, and it isn't a very long book but it was a very interesting read. The way that Jeanette told the story of her life, I didn't know whether to laugh or cry because some of the things that she was talking about, if you are looking at it from a distance, can seem quite comical, but in reality they are awful. They're absolutely awful. It was a really brilliant written book. I enjoyed the audiobook very much as well, and hearing it from Jeanette's own words was, yeah, it was heartbreaking but really funny in the same way, and I didn't know how to feel about this, but I really enjoyed it. The way that Jeanette told the story as well, like I would definitely read more from her in the future, whether it be non-fiction or fiction, especially because I grew up watching Jeanette on TV and Sam was probably my favourite character in iCarly. It was very eye-opening to see what she was actually going through at the time I was watching her on screen when I was like 10. I think having watched iCarly, like, that definitely put a different perspective on things for me. I would really recommend this to anybody who grew up watching Nickelodeon around the time that iCarly was airing. If you haven't already, I feel like everybody has read this book who knows who Jeanette McCurdy is. So yeah, I really enjoyed this, and it was definitely up there for one of my favourite books of the year. So the next book on this list is After Love by Tanya Byrne, and this is a young adult contemporary romance story about these two girls who start to form a connection and a relationship with each other when one of them really tragically dies. I just keep thinking about this book so many months after I read it. While I was reading it, it really got me in the gut. I knew what was going to happen to one of the characters in this relationship because it's in the blurb, and it is kind of the story about how she dies and becomes a reaper and can't see her girlfriend anymore, but it still hit me like a ton of bricks when she does die on a page. I think because the first sort of half of the book, it is developing that relationship between the two girls and you see them fall fall in love on page, and it's such a beautiful story about like first romance, and because they are both queer it's kind of a coming out story as well. And then one of them dies and it is absolutely awful. It's a story about first love, it's about heartbreak, and it was really tragic, and it was so tragic and so sad, but also really, really beautiful, and I absolutely loved it, and it has stuck with me for so long afterwards. And I can't stop thinking about how haunting it was as well when one of the girls does die, and it was just awful but beautiful at the same time. And it's definitely, yeah, one of my favourite books of the year. So next on the list is kind of a very different twist. It's Her Soul to Take by Harley LaRue, which is a adult erotica story about a girl who makes a deal with a demon. It was fantastic. So I heard about this from Becca and the Books, and when she described it on her channel I was like, yes, I need to read this, and I really, really loved it. So it's kind of like a grown-up Twilight almost. The setting in this really small rural town is very, very similar, with like forests, and it's very eerie and dark, and I kind of pictured the entire story with that blue filter that's over the first Twilight movie. The main character is like this punk rock girl who is into very kinky sex, and she comes across this demon and he's trying to make a deal with her so that he can have her soul, and she's kind of like, I'm not going to sell my soul to you. And the two of them kind of work together to fight against this cult. He's doing it because he wants to get her soul out of it. She's got like this book that can control him, so that's why like he's, you know, going along with her wishes. And I got to see the two of them kind of form a little bit of a relationship with each other, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was very, very extreme, but in a good way. I just could not believe how over the top things would get and how dramatic it kind of was, but I really, really enjoyed that. I didn't enjoy the second book quite so much. It was very much kind of the same story but with two different characters, but this was sort of the very first kind of book that I'd read of this style, and I found that I really do enjoy dark romances. I mean, I'm not surprised by that, but I really enjoyed it, and I'm looking forward to reading more from Harley LaRue and reading more dark romances hopefully in 2023 as well. So the next book on this list is another one I don't own a physical copy of. I promise some of the books on this list I do actually physically own. It is The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, and so I borrowed this from the library as a it was like a book club read for Spoops' Patreon, and I'd always been very interested in reading this book, but I didn't realise how much I was going to love it when I did read it. So this is following Addie LaRue, who makes a deal with a demon to be immortal essentially, and we are following her throughout her life up until the present day. It was a very strange story because it was a little bit like a contemporary, a little bit like a romance, a little bit like a historical fiction, and it was the very first V.E. Schwab that I read as well, and I really enjoyed the kind of almost lyrical writing that she did. It was very flowery, very descriptive, and very beautiful, and also the story itself was kind of a little bit haunting in the same way that Afterlove was as well. Addie LaRue talks a lot about the different loves she's had throughout her life, and this is the other thing. She's made this deal that she can live forever, but nobody can remember her, and so it's kind of like a tale of love and a tale of loss. It was really sad because she'd like fall in love with people, but they couldn't remember who she was. You know, if she saw someone every single day and got to know them every single day, find out more about them, they wouldn't remember anything about her, and it was really sad but really beautiful almost. And then you kind of have this almost cat and mouse relationship with the devil. I think it was the devil that she made a deal with, or it was a demon, and you kind of have this cat and mouse relationship because he keeps coming back to Addie and saying like, you know, you can call this quits whenever you want and give me your soul, and she's like, no, get away from me. And I really liked that relationship that she had with the demon as well. It was just such a wonderful story, and I was really sad that when I read Gallant that it didn't quite live up to how much I enjoyed Addie LaRue, but I'm definitely interested in reading more V.E. Schwab. But I think this was very different from anything else that V.E. Schwab has written, and I would love to read more books that are kind of in this style. However, I feel like Addie LaRue is kind of its own thing, and there is not really anything that you can compare it to. I really enjoyed the story and the way it was written, and I really want to revisit it soon because it's like just talking about it has me seeing the images in my head again of like what I was seeing while I was reading it, and it was just wonderful, especially because a lot of it is taking place in the past, and I'm not someone who's read a lot of books set in the past and historical fiction, and it kind of let me dip my toes into historical fiction, and I found that I really enjoyed that, and I would like to try and give historical fiction more of a go in the future. So next on my list is The Cat Who Saved Books by Suzuki Natsukawa, and I'm quite surprised that this managed to fit on the list because I read it right at the end of the year, but although it's still very fresh in my memory when I'm filming this video, I feel like it's something that's going to stick with me for a very, very long time. And that's because this book completely changed my perspective on how I read and how I consume books, and kind of my attitude towards reading as well. So this story follows Rintaro, whose grandfather has died. Rintaro is taking over his grandfather's bookshop, and one day while the bookshop is closed, he hears the bell go on the door, and a cat has come into the bookshop and says to him, "Hey dude, I need you to come and help me save some books." So Rintaro and the cat kind of go on a little bit of an adventure together. They have 3 different instances where they need to save books. Each time is some heinous crime is being committed against books. So the first time, the villain is keeping books locked up in a case and they are never touched, never read, never loved. The second time, the villain is cutting up books to make them faster to read by just reducing them to a simple sentence. And the third time, it is a publisher who is publishing quick, short, easy reads to satisfy the need for a quick, like, binge read type thing, and they are ignoring longer, more intricate stories in their publishing house because they don't sell. And each 3 times they examine the way that people are consuming books, and they talk a lot about how readers give books power. And as someone who has read a lot of books, who owns a lot of books, who constantly feels the pressure to read more and more each year, even more and more each month, really made me reevaluate like how I'm reading books. And I feel like this is a must read for anybody in the booktube community, because I feel like in our community there is a lot of pressure to read a lot, to get through your TBRs, to buy a lot of books, and it's kind of made me think I need to just take a step back, read what I'm enjoying, read stuff less critically as well, like just read something because I like it and not necessarily because it has to be a challenging book or whatever. It's just helped me to sort of figure out like, oh my god, you don't have to read books because everybody tells you you have to read them, you know? Like, it's such a simple concept, but it's definitely helped me with how I read and what I'm reading and how I'm going to read in the future. Yeah, I feel like this is a must read because it was absolutely fantastic. So the third place position on this list is Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. I've got volume 1 here, but I'm kind of going to be including volumes 2 and 3 as well on this same position. I can't believe I only read volume 1 in 2022 because I feel like it's been around my life for so long now, and I only had it in the start of 2022. I loved this. I love this graphic novel series. So this is a Hades and Persephone retelling. We're following all the Greek gods on Mount Olympus, and so it's kind of like it's still with the mythical Greek stuff, but it's more modern day. So like they have cell phones and stuff like that, and so we're following Persephone, and she goes to college in Olympus, and she is literally 18 years old, and she starts to fall for Hades, who is obviously like the king of the underworld, thousands of years old. They do kind of have a little bit of a lot of pining for each other. I also really enjoy seeing the story of the rest of the characters in the world of Lore Olympus. I also absolutely love the art style in this. I think it is absolutely stunning. It's a very slow burn romance, also deals with a lot of heavy topics like sexual assault, but it's beautifully written. It's very, very funny. It's absolutely gorgeous to look at. I'm so excited to carry on with the series. When I think of my favourite love stories, I'm now going to think of Lore Olympus in there because it is just so good. And I'm being very, very patient and waiting for these physical editions to be released instead of reading it online because it is still going on. I think it's Webtoon that it's on. But yeah, I just really, really love this. Can't wait for volume 4. It's stuck with me for so long. It's just beautiful. I just love their romance. It just makes me it's just really good. Second place on this list is Heartstopper by Alice Oseman. So again, like Lore Olympus, I'm holding up volume 1, but I'm kind of thinking about the entire series so far as a collection when I think about the best books I've read this year. I knew subconsciously I was going to love Heartstopper, but I'm always teetering on the edge of stuff when I feel like that, because I'm like, what if I don't actually like it? And I did. I loved it. I loved this story between these two boys and their relationship and that whole first love stuff. It was just so cute. So if you don't know what Heartstopper's about, it's about Nick and Charlie, and it's literally just the story of their relationship as they are teenagers and sort of through the years. So in this first volume we start off with them meeting, and then they become boyfriends and so on and so on. And it's just a really cute, simple love story. It does deal with a lot of heavy topics as well. For example, Charlie has a lot of mental health issues that he is trying to manage, and it's kind of this story about first love between teenagers, but also about struggling and navigating through life and the pressures that teenagers feel. I relate a lot to Charlie. I relate a lot to his sister Tori as well, having kind of dealt with similar things that they deal with, and I think that's probably why I feel such a connection to it, beyond the fact that it's a really, really cute love story. The artwork in it is so cute as well. Like, it definitely fits the tone of the story itself. I'm really going to be sad when the last volume comes out, and that's going to sort of be the end of Charlie and Nick's story and their relationship, like, that we get to see. But I do live in happy hope, because Alice Oseman has kind of confirmed that Nick and Charlie like stay together forever. Like, that's just a thing. They're not going to break up, and it's just such a lovely, sweet story. It's definitely a must read for teenagers, I think, especially young queer people who kind of still discovering themselves as well. It's a story about queer love. It's a story about coming out. It's a story about being a teenager and navigating through life, and it's like a coming of age thing, and it's just so brilliantly told. Alice Oseman really, really captures that British teenage experience, I think, and they have done it so well, and it's just brilliant. I absolutely loved it. It's definitely going to stick with me throughout the years, and I can definitely see myself rereading it very soon at some point. And my final book right at the top of this list is, of course, House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J Maas, which is the first book in the Crescent City series, and it is my favourite book of 2022. It's my favourite book of all time. I love it so much I got a freaking tattoo to represent it. Like, I just love this book so much. So this is a high fantasy series. In it we're following Bryce and Hunt as they go on a kind of solving a murder mystery, essentially, because Bryce has a personal connection to the case. The two of them do develop a little bit of a friendship and eventually a romance with each other. It is just so fantastic. I've always kind of loved Sarah J Maas. I loved the ACOTAR series, and I feel like over time that's really grown on me. Like, when I first read it, I didn't think I liked it that much, and then as I've like sat on it, I'm like, yeah, actually do I really love this. And this one I just loved from the very first page. This was another story that I was like putting off because I thought, well, what if I don't like it? And obviously I was going to love it. I can't believe how much this gripped me though, and how much this got me by the throat and was like, yes, this is going to be your favourite book forever. It was just brilliant. It's not even that special of a story. I really love the world. So it's a high fantasy world, but very modern with modern technology, and I really loved that for some reason. Like, there is just something about like high tech and fantasy that I'm like, yes, I love this. But also the relationship between Bryce and Hunt, especially because it's so slow burn and you see them become friends and then fall in love with each other instead of it feeling like insta love or whatever. It's just the way that their friendship and their relationship develops, and then you've got all these side characters surrounding them, and it's also a story of loss and healing and trauma, and it was just absolutely beautiful. And despite the fact that this book is 800 pages, it's such a quick read. Like, I think I read the last 500 pages in one sitting. I remember staying up till like 5 a.m. sobbing my eyes out because I could not put this book down, and I just needed to know that everybody was going to be okay. And I just freaking love this book. The sequel came out in 2022 and I read that in February, and I was so disappointed because I didn't love it as much as I loved this one. And I think the problem with House of Sky and Breath is that it did suffer from second book syndrome, and everything that happens in House of Sky and Breath is kind of there to set up the third and final book. I'm really sad about that because it could have been such a fantastic series, and how much heart and soul and how much I loved this first book, I feel like it did it a disservice. I still love this book despite the fact that I was a little bit disappointed by the sequel, and I did rate the sequel 5 stars, but I think going back it would have maybe gotten a 3.5 or even a 4 maybe, because I just kind of rated it 5 stars thinking, yeah, like, I just really loved the first book and that's why I'm giving it 5 stars. But I just loved this. I really wish that I had vlogged reading this so that not even for you guys, but so that I could look back and see how much I bloody loved this when I was reading it, and those feelings I had reading it for the first time. I know how many people love this. Like my best friend, she loves this book just as much as I do, and she was very jealous that I got to read it for the very first time, because you never replicate that feeling of reading your favourite book for the first time. And I know that when I reread this, like, I'm gonna love it all over again, but it will never feel as special to me as it did when I read it the first time around. Yeah, I just really love this book. I just really love this book. I'm going to scream about this book forever. Even though I have read and finished it now, I'm going to have to somehow squeeze it into lots of videos in my channel in 2023, because I just don't want to ever stop thinking about this book. When I read Nevernight for the first time, I was completely enthralled by that. I absolutely loved it. I didn't think that anything could ever kind of make me feel that way about a book again, and this did, even more so than when I read Nevernight. Yeah, I just can't believe how much I bloody love this book. I just can't believe it. Will I ever love a book as much as I love House of Earth and Blood ever again? Hopefully. I don't want to go the rest of my life reading stuff that never lives up to this. But I just can't believe how much I loved this and how much it had me. And I'm just thinking about it now, and it's been 12 months since I read it, and I just can't believe, like, it's been 12 months since I read it and I'm still obsessed with this book. Like, I just cannot believe it. And I'm not surprised. I'm not surprised, but it's still incredible. Like, I'm still obsessing over this goddamn book and these goddamn characters, and I don't want to have to wait for the third one either in the series. I don't want to have to wait. I want to know what happens next now, but sadly I have to wait, so yeah. So those were the best books that I have read in 2022. I feel like it went on a bit of a rant at the end there with Crescent City and just sort of screaming about how much I loved it, but it's true. Everything is true. I just love that book so much. And if you haven't read it yet and you really like fantasy, please read it, because it's honestly, I just love it so much. Let me know in the comments what your favourite books of 2022 were, if any of my books that I loved were also on your list. And do remember to give this video a big thumbs up if you haven't already, and subscribe if you would like to see more of my face on your feed. But I think that's it for today, guys, for this video. I've gone on long enough about all these books that I've absolutely loved, but it's been so nice to kind of revisit them and reminisce over them, and I'm really looking forward to what I'm going to be reading in 2023 and seeing what books make it on my favourites for 2023 next year. Oh my god, like, I'm so here for a year of brilliant books, and I'm very, very excited to see what I'm reading and how much I love them. But yeah, that's it for this video, guys. Thank you again, and I'll see you soon. Bye!